Hey guys, this is Coach Vass, and I'm here to share with you my end of the season self scout tips. I'm going to go through the whole process of what we do at the end of the season, the path we go, the what we're going to look at, exactly how we do it, and some processes that have been shared with me. So there's multiple layers of the self scout process. To me, I broke them up into three parts. One is player evaluation, two is scheme evaluation, and three is tendency evaluation. So you're looking at what your players can do, how your scheme works, independent of what your percentages were on first down blitzing and all that. And then I do that separately because to me, those are three different processes. There's different reasons that you want to do these things. So before we get into that, though, we have to cleanse all the data. So what I normally did is I created, and this is usually done in the preseason. So you're doing this during the season along the way. So at some point, as you get ready for the 23 season, you want to look back on this if you've never done this process before, and you want to at least have a little bit of a discussion about what you want to do at the end of the 23 season. Why I say that is you can make your life easier at the end of the season to put it to bed, to move on, if you have this process in place before the season starts. But we're at the end of the season, so we're going to assume that you don't have that. Because a lot of the things that you're going to do in season, grading, grouping tags, grouping concepts, you can do in season easily. Especially if you coach a defense like I did, where it morphed week to week. Sometimes you forget the granular details or what a call is if you're using a lot of tags and things. I can't tell you how many times I would look and say, I don't remember what this is and have to go look it up. So use that time while you're grading in season to help you at the end of the season. But if you're at this step right now, what I would do is I would figure out whatever you want to do in terms of what you want to study, assign it by coach, and again, try to use the things that those coaches did during the season. And then what you're going to do is you're going to split those up and you're going to go game by game and have them do that. So set some sort of time period or some sort of, hey, let's get this done by X, cleanse all that data. And also more importantly, or I guess it's of the same importance, make sure that your data that you've already done is good. And this is important. It doesn't matter if you call a concept something, you could call it whatever you want, as long as it's named the same thing. You can always change it later. So if you're like me and you're really bad at coming up with names for things, you can just call it whatever, make some sort of log of what that is, and then from there, you can easily just go and change all of those values later. As you're going through these games and these game by game, you want to make sure, in my opinion, that you want to mark the clips for individual teaching and for scheme clips. So create two columns. One, this, by the way, also not only helps with self-scout, but banquets, looking for great plays, highlight tapes if a player hasn't made a highlight tape, and also scheme evaluation, and that'll come in later. So mark individual players and what they're doing. And then for your teaching tapes for the following year, if you have a certain blitz or a certain technique, you want to show your players doing those techniques to future generations or future players that are at your school. You have that marked, good and bad. And then from there, you want to have the scheme clips. So let's say, for example, so part one, I'm talking about individual teaching, good force technique, bad cutback, etc. And then for scheme clips, what I like to do is have a master library of examples of these things. So in our quarters technique, it would say, blue safety dig. So we knew when we were looking at these things and things that we wanted to teach, again, you're killing multiple birds with one stone. You can go find that easily. The coverage, whether it's good or bad, and then what exactly that is, and you can combine it, split it up, however you like to do things. So you create those tags, you set all that out, and you start going game by game. And again, it's good to do on the back end, but keep this in mind. Yes, we're doing this for the end of the 22 season, but also keep these things in mind when you're planning, because I know how it goes. You think about your season, you put it to bed, then you go on the clinic circuit, you go on the, online courses, whatever. And then July rolls around and you're like, hey, what should we tag this year? What should we do? So put this in a place, put a reminder in your phone, pick your phone up, pause, pick your phone up, put a reminder, July 1st, look at stuff Vass talked about. Be more specific so you'll remember, because I talk a lot of crazy stuff. Anyway, moving on. Also, you want to be able to code the qualitative data. What does that mean? Try to use the same terms. Going back to how you call things in your concepts. If you have buzzwords, a popular one for tackling is drive for 5. Meaning once you make the tackle, you drive for 5 yards, okay? Make sure everybody's putting drive, the letter 4, and then the number 5. Make sure you're all on the same page of using buzzwords like this. The worst thing you can do is spend a ton of time going through game by game, crystallizing data, and then you call it different things, and then it's like trying to herd cats. We all know that's not fun. Never is. Also, a good time to mark missed tackles. And this will go into the evaluation we're going to talk about once we get into how we actually do this in Hudl. So this is the beginning. This is all the stuff you're going to do before you sit down and go, okay, what did we do? What was good? What was bad? Right? Mark those missed tackles, because you can now tell if it's a player issue or a scheme issue. So going back to the self-scouting process I talked about, player evaluation, scheme evaluation, tendency evaluation, marking these missed tackles will help you see, okay, was it this player just wasn't a good tackler? Or, hey, we weren't good at these type of tackles. Also, as an aside, notebook method. What I like to do is, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I start with negative plays because I'm a defensive guy. I'm a negative person by nature. I want to see the bad stuff first. So I look at explosive runs, explosive passes. I just like to have a notepad, and I want to know what's happening. Why do these things happen? Was it block destruction? Was it a scheme issue? And again, you don't know that yet, so you just got to keep track and just put little tally marks. So that's the non-data part we'll talk about that I also like to do. Another thing that I like to do before we get into the process of tagging and evaluating is I like to create defensive codes and concept columns. What does this mean? Okay. It means that every call that we have, every call that we've inserted, we have some sort of code for it. So for us, we had a ton of 5-man pressures, cover 1 5-man pressures. Well, that's great. But if you look at those concepts in and of themselves, and we ran a bunch of different ones, you'll see that, and this is an unscientific guess, but you'd see that, the top one would be the 8th most concept we ran. And the second most run 5-man pressure would be the 11th. And then the third one would be the 12th. But if you looked at all the 5-man pressures together, it might be one of our top 3 or 4 concepts as a whole. So I have a way to code that. So one thing I like to is, it's pretty simple. 5-man pressure, 5 MP, right? Cover 1. You like to run a lot of different versions of cover 1. Cover 1 wrap, invert, hole, robber. There's a bunch of them. But at the end of the day, that's cover 1 family. So when you get to hey, we need to watch this and figure out what was good and what was bad, at least you can all start to do that. There's not an easy way to do that. There's not an easy way to watch all the different cover 1s. Now, you might be sitting here going, well, if they're all called 1 robber, 1 rat, you can click through, but why not have a way for different types of stuff? So in our quarters family, where the words were completely different, you couldn't sort them A to Z, and you have to go looking, okay, what was this? What was that? Just put COV4. So we like to do that, and then we like to have a concept column after. So it would be that code, a hyphen, and then whatever the description. So let's go back to the 5-man pressure part. 5 MP hyphen name of pressure. So then you can group those. So when you're watching, you want to watch all your 5-man pressures together. You can group the 5-man pressures, then you can sort by tendency. And again, I'm going to show you all this. We're going to go back through all this, but I feel that it's important to do this on the front end before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of it, because if I wait till then, you're going to be like, wow, that was a great point, and I didn't do that. Now I got to go back through it again. So that's part one and the starting point and where you want to go. All right, so let's talk about part one, player evaluation. Okay, player evaluation has a ton of relevance at all levels. So if you're looking at college, your college coach, you want to look at recruiting. Where do we need guys? What type of people do we need, etc. High school, you're trying to build your structure for the following year. You're trying to see who's coming back, who's not. And this is where, when you do player evaluation and you insert this data, you want to keep an eye on who's doing what. So let's use that tackling example I talked about. You have a senior, great kid, not a great tackler. We've all had him. They're missing this. Let's say it's a inside out, inside linebacker angle tackle, something everybody does. And you notice, hey, we missed a lot of angle tackles last year, but this one person was missing them, but he's not coming back. The other guys were fine. And so that's the art of doing the self-scout, is to say, okay, well, we missed a bunch of angle tackles, but 5 kids did it and 4 of them are coming back. Okay, we got to work on that, versus one of the kids missed most of the tackles and he's not coming back, but your other guys did it all right. Obviously something you want to work on, but it's a player problem, not a scheme problem, or not a teaching problem across the board. You know, if you're, what is it? What's the phrase? If you're not coaching it, you're allowing it. I don't know if I always believe in that. If you have a guy that he's having a hard time understanding, the rest of the group is, this is very, very important. And this is really, how do you take a season's worth of data and break it apart to understand what went right, what went wrong? Conversely, if you're noticing that this other type of technique, a bunch of the kids are not doing it well, but one is, and that kid's not coming back, that's also important to know. So, and this part of it also is for ranking your returning players, ID position groups that are strong and weak. Again, college, we have a lot of college coaches out there. Recruiting, what do we need? I know you guys are on the ball and you know way ahead of time what you need. But high school, how do you build your system? Hey, we don't have any linebackers. What are we going to do? Do we need to switch to another defense? Do we need to, or we have a plethora of linebackers, we don't have a lot of D linemen. Important part of the process. And then one thing that I strongly believe in, and I took this, I think it was a Jimmy Johnson book I read, was every coach does this independently. Because a lot of the times when you get in these situations, sometimes the best debater wins, not necessarily the best argument. So have the coaches do their evaluations on their own and then come together after you have it. And then it also makes you evaluate the scheme as well, as I mentioned. You know, is that player making the mistakes? Are they coming back, etc.? What we've already talked about. Okay, so let's move into the process within Hudl. I'm going to go ahead and work in here. So the first thing, as I mentioned before, I'm going to watch runs over 10, passes over 15. So I'm going to go to offensive tendencies equal run. Down to outcomes, gain, and I'm just going to quickly get everything over 10 yards. And I'm going to watch this. Okay. And this is the evaluation period. So this is after you've done all your tagging, you've done all your work, and you should have already done this by position, but then you're going to go ahead and what I would do is watch this. I got my notepad out and I'm just watching different things. Now, this game, this is a state title game. We completely flipped our defense around. And so there's going to be a ton of mistakes in here because we're not used to playing this sort of thing. So go to a more familiar game, something like this. Okay, so this is obviously a big play. This was actually, we had 10 guys on the field. And this is where it's good to have these notes, right? We had 10 guys on the field. I tried to call a timeout down here. They told me because I wasn't the head coach, I couldn't call a timeout. I'm losing my mind. So that's an obvious error. Not something you can really control, minus, hey, get your call in faster. We forgot what happened, but this is, so you're going through, you're watching, and again, this is all the bad stuff here. All right. In this call, the nose isn't getting across face. So these are just things I'm watching. I'm watching this, okay? Our nose isn't getting across face on the slant. I'm making notes here. N doesn't get in his gap. We're not really set here. This guy set the national touchdown record versus us, by the way. 76 touchdowns in 15 games. Not great. Ran a 10-400 meter or something. But I'm just going to keep going through this. I'm going to watch all the runs over 10. Now, one thing I do want to say, and this is going to sound a little bit like bragging. I promise I'm not trying to. We played 800 something snaps this year, but only 500 or 400 with the ones. So this is a cut up of everything. So if you want to just watch certain things, what I would do, and we get more into this as we go into the different situations, is we go and we say, okay, we labeled when the twos were in Scrabini. We would try and take all these out. So really, I have for this situation, I have another cut up, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump to that. It's going to be open field. You do that by just clicking this down arrow where it's named, and then you can bring on whatever cut up if you want to switch cut ups. So I wanted to show you a little bit of the navigation there. Next thing we're going to do is now we're going to go to pass. Pause it for you. Go back down to outcomes. Now we're going to try, we just want to watch 15 plus. Hudl has added a brand new feature, custom filters. So if you don't see something here that you like, you just go here, and then you can do like you could in the old Hudl. Just go greater than equal to 15. And there you go. And we'll watch our passes. Okay, we got hit on the RPO there. We're just going through. Lose a fade ball for a touchdown, and you're going to go through and you're going to mark. And again, you want to keep the things in your mind. Is that guy coming back? Was that a scheme issue? What is that, a technique issue? Is that something we need to emphasize more, or did that player just make a good play? I can tell you this year, we were exceptional in our bail technique. We got caught on that play. That's going to happen, right? And that's the processes you're going to go through when you're evaluating what you're seeing and what you need to do for the next year. You're always looking at the stuff and you're saying, is this a scheme or a player problem? It's the simple question you keep in mind at all times when you're doing this. Are we asking the player to do something they can't do, or is it the scheme? Or did the offense just make a great a play? And obviously, if you're doing this for offense, vice versa. All right, now that I've been through enough pain and misery, I'm going to go ahead and clear those columns. Going up here, clear all. And now let's watch the good stuff. So you want to go down to outcomes. So anytime you want gain loss, if you want to watch all touchdowns, interceptions, sacks, whatever you want to watch, you come down here and you can just easily click these. So you clear your filters again. If you have any, you go up to filters, you clear that. One thing that I like to do, I haven't mentioned yet, and I don't really switch yet. I switched the columns, or rather, switch the playlist that I was watching, but I'll watch all the negatives regardless, because a lot of the guys that were backups next year, they're going to be starters next year. So I want to watch them. I want to see them doing good things and bad things. So I switched prematurely, but that's okay. So these are just open field starter plays. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go through all the good stuff. Let's watch all the TFLs. So I'm going to go gain, and I'm just going to quickly click through here. So we want to do gain. We want to do run, because the passes will most likely be sacks, etc. So let's watch all the stuff. We watched all the bad stuff. Let's go watch the good stuff, right? I'm going to click through. I'm going to let the playlist play. I still got my notepad out. I'm adding to different columns. Got a little seagull flying action. Got a little Bay Area Saturday morning seagull flyby. You'll see that a lot. If you've ever been to a Giants game, you know about the 8th inning they start coming in, trying to steal all that popcorn. And you're just watching and you're evaluating from there. So I'm going to go watch all the run stuffs. I guess that's the new word for it, the buzzword in the analytics world. And then I'm going to go watch, because I want to watch that stuff separately. Because, again, if you watch all negative plays, regardless of play type, then you go watch sacks. You'll be watching a lot of the same stuff. Then I'm going to watch all the sacks. I'm going to go through. Watch all that, and I'm just going to click through. I got interceptions, fumbles, safeties, defensive touchdown. Let's watch a defensive touchdown. I showed you my best, or my worst. I'm going to show you my best. This is always awesome when the ball just pops into your hand. You can see that is not a coach. This is the thing, though. Like, this wasn't some great coaching move, right? Guy just literally drops the ball. It's a great effort clip, but I don't think we really did anything to force this fumble here. And that's important. Sometimes you got to know, hey, we get lucky, we don't get lucky. It's all part of the process. Okay, so I've watched through that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start watching everything. So I'm going to now, even though I did it prematurely, I'm going to go open my open field Cutup. I'm going to clear all filters. And then I'm going to start going. And I do want to briefly mention this. So my open field Cutup that I watch. So I watch all the open field plays. You might be sitting there going, okay, what's open field? Open field is all plays minus backed up. So whatever you consider inside the 5 or inside the 10-yard line. 2-minute situations. 4-minute where they're trying to run the clock out. Red zone. Goal line. Hail Mary. Victory. Obviously, watch that unless you have some catastrophic play on offense. And then Scribini/garbage time. So sometimes, it's a big win, but your starters are still in for some reason or whatever. And, they're running their best plays, or they're up by a bunch. They're running their best plays. You're running your best plays, but the game's out of hand, etc. Because you don't want to cloud your data. You don't want to cloud different things. For example, the Broncos, their head coach got fired a couple years ago or last year. They weren't great, but they were awesome in the red zone. So if you kind of mesh it all together, and a lot of teams have different calls. And if you don't have different calls in the red zone, then you don't have to watch that separately. But this is how I split it up. And this is how not only myself, but a lot of coaches that I've talked to did quite a lot of research for this for you guys. Small high school all the way up to an NFL defensive coordinator, rather, talking to different people about what they did. So this seems to be the theme. So then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get that open field cut up, and I'm going to watch all first and second downs. Okay, so I'm going to add this. I'm going to add this. And then what I want to do is, and this is how I watch, is I go by personnel group. So I'm going to watch our number one personnel group we saw was 10 personnel. Watch all the runs. Now there's going to be some overlap from those big plays on offense and the big plays on defense. And I'm just going to, I would personally just let this ride, or I'm not going to bore you with this. I would sort the column set first, where I would go, actually, I would make different cutups. And you might say, how do I make a cutup in New Hudl? I've not used New Hudl. Let's show you how to do that. So you're going to go here. Let's make a 10 personnel cutup. We got 10 personnel versus the run, first and second down. Got everything you selected. You want to add them all. You click all items. You click new playlist. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to take you away from the screen. Actually, no, I can do this. It won't take you out of here. 10 personnel run. Open field. How easy that is. And I can return. Voila. So I'm going to go through that. I'm going to watch all the different run, 10 versus the run, 10 versus pass. What was the next one? 30 versus run, 30 versus pass, 21, so on and so forth. First and second down. Then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to unclick this stuff manually. Again, you can go up here and clear all filters. I'm now going to go and I'm now going to watch third down. Try to slow it down a little bit so I don't make you dizzy. And I'm going to watch 3rd and 1. I'm going to watch all 3rd and 1s, regardless of personnel group. We had 11 clips of 3rd and 1. Kind of watch that. Were we successful? Were we not successful? Click through. And again, scheme or player issue. We blew this blitz. We stopped them, but we blew the blitz. So it's a plus minus on this play. This backer's supposed to leave the box and he's supposed to blitz in here. I can just tell off the, well, I know the call, but, you know. And I actually want to talk about this real quick and the importance of qualitative data and quantitative data. And if you've listened to the podcast before, I do Make Defense Great Again, shameless plug. That's right. Hudl's the sponsor of the show. Yeah, I can mention that. You guys, they're a sponsor. Let's go. Anyway, I've told the story before. This is a blitz that I always use when I talk about end of season self-scout. So this game is 2017. After the 2016 season, I was doing a self-scout. And I brought my old boss and good friend, Brandon Lechtenberg, in. And we ran this blitz. We ran it 3 times or 4 times in a game. And it averaged for 30 yards a carry. 30 yards per play it averaged against it. So naturally, what do you think I want to do? I want to get rid of it, right? Looked at the data. It was laughable. And Brandon heard me talk about this and said, hey, pull it up. So I did. And we watched those 4 or 5, I think it was like 5 plays. Doesn't matter. We watched them. And again, player versus scheme. Every single time we ran this blitz, we had free runners in the backfield. Every single time, sometimes 2. And the running back decided to be Barry Sanders that night. It's the worst rushing performance I'd ever given up as a defensive coordinator. I think they ran for like 450. Something insane. I think they had to replace the turf after the game because the kid tore a hole through it. But Brandon showed this, and this is why qualitative breakdowns are good. You watch this stuff, and he says, Vass, you had 1, 2, sometimes 3 guys in the backfield. They missed the tackle. So it wasn't a scheme issue. It was a player issue. Fast forward, the next year, the first 3rd and short, we call this blitz, the same blitz I was ready to throw out. And here's the results. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, we got the doors blown off us in this game by a superior team. Out-coached, out-executed, didn't help. The AC in the bus, 2-hour bus ride, 109 degrees. The AC broke 15 minutes from school, but we're not using that as an excuse. Just showing why it was even worse. And look what happens. We get a stop in the first 3rd down of the year. If I just looked at the numbers and didn't take the time to do this, I would have gotten rid of that blitz. Would we have something else that would have worked out just as well? Maybe. Absolutely. Could be. But we saved ourselves by going through this. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to go 3rd and 1. I'm going to go 2 and 3. I'm going to watch that. I'm going to go 4 to 6. I'm going to go 7 to 10. I'll save you guys all the clicks. You guys get the idea, huh? And then 11 plus for 3rd down. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the same thing with 4th down. I might not use as many columns. Again, let's go over that real quick. 3rd and 1, 2 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 10, 11 plus. I mentioned that and reinforced that because I know that is a question. Every defensive coordinator we talk to about breakdown, what do you use? What are your parameters? 4th down, I usually watch like 1 to 2. It doesn't really matter at that point because it's either going to be an obvious run situation where they think they can get it, or it's going to be an obvious pass situation. So watch the runs, watch the passes, however you want to do it, doesn't matter. Then, without clicking around and doing too much and going back and forth, I would go back to my other Cutup. Actually, I will do that for this because we need to see how to do this part. So now I'm going to go back to my master Cutup, which is here. Go ahead and click there. Click out. Okay. And now I'm going to watch those situations I initially told you that I removed. So I'm going to go watch 2 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into situations. I have a custom situation column I told you I used before. And I'm going to click through here and I'm going to watch all the 2 minutes. Oh, I don't want to watch this play. Oh, actually, you know what? Is this the Hail Mary? No. We gave up a Hail Mary in the state title game. It was 1-on-5 and the guy made the play. Yeah. I was scarred. But I'm going to go through. I'm going to watch 2 minute. I'm going to watch 4 minute. So we need to get the ball back. The team's driving. We got to get a stop. Were we successful? And you may only get one of these a year. In fact, this year we had 2 4-minute drives that we faced, and they were in the same game. They were back to back. So you may never see that in a whole season. But if you want to, think what is a more important thing you got to worry about? You got to win a game. You're down. You've got to get the ball back. Pretty important, right? Then the next thing I want to do is, now I did this manually with the situation. So I have red zone. I can just click here. I didn't do it this year, but I started adding a backed up category so you just easily click through it. Now this year, when I was at Sarah, we used from the 20 to the 4 as the red zone. I have since evolved to a high red zone being the 25 to the 13, low red zone being the plus 12 to the plus 4, goal line 3 and in. But as you can see here, if you do a situation column like this, you'd obviously click that. If not, you can go down to field zone. Click here, and then you can go. So if you just want to do the 20 to the 10, you click here, you watch these plays. If you want to go by runs, then passes, or go by down to distance, obviously, you scroll up to situations. You can watch the 10 and in if you want to watch the backed up. If you're like, hey, let's just make it easier. Let's watch all the 10 minus 10 and in. I don't know. It looks like we may have some of the. Oh, I'm sorry. That's from the 10 to the 20. Ha, clicked the wrong one. All right, there we go. So you can watch all your snaps from the 10 to the 20 backed up here and see how you did on defense. You just watch through that. I go through there. As I mentioned, goal line, high red, low red. I'm trying to think if I missed anything else. And then as I'm going through, this is obviously not a data thing, but on my notepad as I'm watching, I'm looking through problematic routes, concepts, runs, missed tackles. Those things I've already talked about, but I'm just noticing, hey, you see a pattern here with any of the things that the offense is doing. Is that giving us a problem? Is there a certain coverage we're struggling with? Obviously, a huge part of evaluating your defense. So the last part of the self-scout study that I do is the tendency study. So what did you do in certain situations? Now, I'm going to use a huge caveat here, asterisk, whatever you want to say. I have coached in leagues with very different offenses. So I was not as much into that aspect of studying myself, because there would be games where we didn't blitz a single play versus we blitzed 50% of the time because of the offense. Had nothing to do with what we wanted to do. It was more of what the offense did. So I kind of personally stayed away from some of that stuff, but I know a lot of really, really good coaches who do. So let's talk about it. So the first thing you want to do, I did not do this, but if this is something that you think would be important, you create a custom column. Now, I've mentioned some of my custom columns here, defensive code. So I mentioned here's just some of the stuff that we did. Our coverages. I know this doesn't mean a lot to you guys, but as I mentioned, we put all the 6-man zero blitzes together. We got a little bit more specific with some of the coverages. So as you can see, usually with numbers, I would put COV in front of it. So if it was coverage was blue, I would just put blue. If the coverage was a number, I would put COV2, fire zone, whatever. So we do the codes and then a concept. If you want to get more generic than that to study your own tendencies, you can create a man or zone column. which is very easy to do at the end, even as another layer of analysis. And sometimes you find that you want to study something after you get through your initial self-scout. Maybe there's something that you didn't look at. And then you can just use data to add those columns. So this is the beautiful part about this, is you go into this, you click everything that's a zone. And for us, we had zones, we had man, and then we had kind of a man match, zone match, hybrid gray area. So an easy way to do this is once you have all your codes, you go through and you click, all right, let's start man/zone match coverages. Well, this here, this, and you just keep clicking through. And then you add a column, man, zone, whatever, coverage type, whatever you want to call there. And you say, okay, that's match. Then you clear. Okay, now you want to do all your man coverages. Well, and if you just want to talk straight coverage, you can just select your man coverages with only rushing 4. Or you could do all of your man coverages, whether you're rushing 3, 4, 5, 6, and if you're crazy, 7. You just click through this. So let's do man. So on and so forth. Then I added that column that I've created. Man. I'm just copy, paste. And then obviously true zone. So this would be more of a zone concept. This would be, if you want to do drop 8, you want to add some more flavor to this, you click through, copy, paste, so on and so forth. So you do that. If you're really into playing, if you're playing spread teams and you do middle field open versus middle field close, you do the same thing. You create a column that's MOFO/MOFC, and you literally just tag MOFO, MOFC. So you select all your coverages that are in the middle fields open, copy, paste. Then all the ones that are closed, copy, paste. And you have another layer. So now you just go down to the bottom. Once you're done with all that, you go to the bottom here, and you'll see something ungroup stats. You click in here to expand it. You click here, and then you move it to the defensive tendencies, and then there's something you can look at. So obviously, I didn't do that. I'm just giving you some ideas. But let's go through the steps that you take if you want to self-scout yourself. Self-scout yourself. I think I'm redundant there. A self-scout of yourself. Yes. A self-scout, if you want to do that by down a distance. So let's go. Let's check out second and 7 to 10 and see the tendencies that we had. So let's go second down. 8, 9, 10. And if you just want to see if you blitzed or not, now here's the thing about this caveat. With any sort of data input, if you're a team that runs simulated pressure, so you're bringing 4, you're bringing a second or third level defender, you're dropping a first level defender, but you're only rushing 4, Hudl is going to basically see there's a blitz category. Is it yes or no? So if you just want to see if you brought someone from a first or a second or third level, rather, that will show. But if you're doing a simulated, you would need to add some sort of added layer to that. So you go down here, and there it is. A blitz 24% of the time on second and 7 to 10. Let's see if I can find some sort of tendency here. And this is where you just play around. So I was 24% on 7 to 10. Let's see, 10 plus. Same. Pretty interesting. I never self-scouted this. Never. But you can see right there. That's over an entire season. Now, I think if you went by game, you would see a situation where there's going to be some games where there's a ton more blitz. Like I'm going to tell you right now, this game we're watching here, we dropped 8, 80% of the time, 90% of the time, and then brought 7. It was max blitz or max coverage. But you can go by opponent. And you can click through some of these columns here. If you have a column, I usually do offensive team. I'm not sure if it's completely filled in for this, so I'm going to skip it. But you can go down and then you can click by team. If there's a team that you struggled against or a team that you feel that took advantage of your tendencies, you could just go to that team and take a look at that game. And so what I do is I want to look at blitz rates, middle field open, what type of coverage or whatever. And I'm going to look at 1st and 10 as a whole. Then I'm going to split it up. P and 10, which is the first play in the series, 1st and 10, sudden change. So you just had a turnover on offense or they blocked a field goal or whatever. I want to see that. And then I want to see 1st and long, 1st and short. I could tell you off the top of my head, 1st and short, just knowing myself and how I call defenses. I probably was my least blitz down because I'm afraid's the wrong word. You're never afraid, right? But concerned that a team might take a shot. So that's that. 2nd down, 1 to 6, 7 to 10, and 11 plus were my categories I used. 3rd down, same sort of situations that I talked about in the last sections. And then that's really where your tendencies come in. And again, you want to take out the red zone. You want to take out the goal line. You want to take out those sort of things. And then you can go by field position. And the great thing about this new tool, I guess it's not really new anymore, but this tool here is you can easily click through. You're not clicking through a report where you got to go back. You can just say, hey, like I just did, I was able to pull up my blitz tendencies on 2nd and 7 to 10, and then an 11 plus within 30 seconds. So that is the final part of the Self Scout. Obviously, you want to then wrangle that data outside of Hudl into something, a word processing document, and then you want to talk about it with your coaches. And the most important thing that I think in closing here is I have a tendency, and I know some friends of mine have a tendency that you watch this stuff in, December, January, February, and then spring ball comes around and you forget about it. You've gone to clinics, you've seen all this new cool stuff. Make sure you put this stuff into place, reminder in your phone, whatever it is, to make sure that you go back across this data and make sure it's digestible for your future self. You're in the weeds here. You're going to remember a lot of things that are happening right now, but you have to ask yourself, will I know what this means in 6 months? If the answer is yes, then you're on the road. Thanks for joining me on a conversation of Self Scout. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have further questions on New Hudl, you can go to hudl.com. There's tutorial videos. I know I had 1,000 questions. A lot of them are answered there. And also you can set a call with a Hudl expert, get your new workflow set up in Hudl so you can have a good off season preparing to go into next season and a good 2023. Thanks for joining me.